Next News. Breaking news.
Tonight, a question the media mocked for years is back in the national spotlight, and this time it's not being driven by anonymous message boards or late-night speculation. It's being pushed into the open by President Trump's own EPA, by viral clips of Administrator Lee Zeldin, by a former Air Force environmental engineer making explosive claims, and now by a New York Post investigation asking whether Americans were smeared as conspiracy theorists for simply noticing what was happening above their heads. So here's the real question. Were people lied to, dismissed, and gaslit for simply asking the obvious? Now this matters because it's not just about lines in the sky. It's about whether the American people can trust the institutions that lecture them, regulate them, and ridicule them. For years, ordinary citizens looked up, asked questions, and got the same response from the establishment machine. Shut up, move along, you're not crazy, those aren't chemtrails. But now the Trump administration is doing what the previous administration refused to do, opening the books, putting information online, and saying the public deserves honesty. If there's been taxpayer-funded weather modification research, Americans have the right to know, right? If geoengineering proposals involve sulfur dioxide or other atmospheric interventions have been discussed, Americans have the right to know. And if agencies, media outlets, and so-called experts hid behind semantics while the public was demanding straight answers, then trust was not broken by the people asking questions. It was broken by the elites who acted like transparency was some kind of a threat. And speaking of questions that people used to dismiss until real results started showing up, let me tell you about something that got my attention in a very personal way. You've probably seen the clips of Joe Rogan with Mel Gibson talking about people close to him who faced serious health struggles and then saw major turnarounds. Rogan mentions light-based therapies working at the cellular level, and Gibson says it plainly, this stuff works. You see, that hit home for me. My wife dealt with constant discomfort and anxiety, and when we started looking into red light therapy, we found real hope. Jonathan Otto has done great work helping people understand these tools, and if you want to learn more, go to myredlight.com. The feedback from people using these devices has been incredible. If you're curious, now is the time to check it out. Make sure you use NNN25 for 25% off individual items or NNN30 for 30% off bundles. Now back to the story. The establishment can no longer just laugh away. Because here's the twist the press doesn't want to admit. The story is trending now because the timeline's impossible to ignore. First, Lee Zeldin publicly says the Trump EPA will stop dismissing these questions and publish what it knows. Then President Trump shares the clip and blows the doors open on the conversation. Then a former military environmental engineer appears online with claims that hit like a thunderbolt. And finally, even a mainstream outlet is forced to investigate instead of sneer. Here is Zeldin talking with Glenn Beck. It's already happening. Lee Zeldin, the head of America's Environmental Protection Agency, saying that chemtrails are created by spraying massive amounts of sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere to control the weather.
Geoengineering really scares me because it seems like we're starting to play God a bit. And I see the videos of chemtrails, that are coming out, and I think this is part of geoengineering. The farmers over in England are saying, look at the skies, and now it's going to be cloudy in 30 minutes, and it's cloudy, and they were having all kinds of problems. Can you tell me what's true and what's not?
So when I first got confirmed, I sat down here at the agency with people and told them everything that I can know, everything that this agency knows about these topics, I want us to communicate with the public. Everything that I know as the EPA administrator should be communicated transparently with the American public, whatever the answer is, wherever the facts lie. We posted last month on the EPA website, epa.gov/geoengineering, a lot of the answers I received on this topic. And there has been government funding that's gone towards some of these efforts. There are entities and people who would want to drastically scale these activities up. I agree with you with your concern just with the idea of playing God. The solar radiation modification, stratospheric aerosol injection, marine cloud brightening, there are these activities to make changes to the stratosphere or the lower atmosphere and try to deflect sun rays from hitting the Earth to instead send it back into space. And in the case of stratospheric aerosol injection, you're talking about putting sulfur dioxide, a lot of it, for a long time, into the upper atmosphere, which, by the way, turns into acid rain. There are real health concerns with regards to these activities. And it's not like, it's thoroughly studied, it's approved, it's trusted, it's vetted. Instead, you have people who just want to do it on their own, like try to get themselves, someone to hand over $1 billion to just go dump a whole bunch of sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere. And no, that doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound right, and it shouldn't happen.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't sound right at all. He said the quiet part out loud, the EPA admits these geoengineering schemes exist and carry real health risks. Now, an Air Force environmental engineer, Kristen Megan, I know her personally. I've heard her story firsthand. She's going viral again for this classic moment.
Here with Kristen Megan. She's a military veteran, right?
Yes, I was in the U.S. Air Force for 9 years.
Wow. And you came out and blew the whistle on geoengineering, things that you witnessed were going on. Can you give us the real nutshell?
Absolutely. Basically, I had heard of what many people know as the term chemtrails. And I worked in a job called bioenvironmental engineering. And I thought that was insane. And why would we do something like that? Modify the weather by using hazardous materials in our atmosphere. And actually the process of trying to debunk it or disprove it, I realized it was actually coming right out of my office, as I was one of the people that was approving the chemicals. And it really shook the core of my oath. And I did a lot of sampling, did a lot of investigation, and I blew the whistle and I got out. And I've now used my credentials, my oath, and my powers for good to help people understand it's very real. It's now openly admitted. There are multiple forms of weather modification. I specifically found the one of stratospheric aerosol injection. And collectively around the globe, we have to understand that it is now being admitted because they're saying it's combating climate change. Well, the climate change we need to be worried about is man-made climate engineering, also known as geoengineering.
And when you say you had chemicals being pumped into the air, what kind of chemicals are they putting out that rain down on humanity, basically?
Nanoparticulate metals, like we had different sulfates and barium and strontium. I know it's probably changed over time. I know they use silver iodide for certain things, but these are the odd part of it was the quantities that I saw them coming in, the form that they were coming in. And it's the same type of materials that I was trying to engineer out of the workplace to substitute with safer materials. And when you notice that what's called the safety data sheet, the information about a chemical of what personal protective equipment to wear, how do you dispose of it, how do you pack it to ship it. When key information is missing, I ask questions. And my questions led to demonization, and I knew I found something I shouldn't have.
Kristen Megan, if you don't know her, look her up. She does amazing work. She's been in the Liberty Movement for a very long time, and I'm proud to know her. This is not condensation. It's something called a chemtrail. It's not contrails. A guy with a Nikon P1000 camera zooms in on a plane, suspiciously making a lot of condensation.
I'm sure this is just nothing, but check this out.
So look at that massive chemtrail behind that plane. That is not a contrail. That is clearly a jet that is spraying something. Yeah. Look at how far. I mean, that's quite the zoom lens right there. He caught it.
And you'd be right, because that's what it is, and you're not allowed to say that it's anything else on this platform. If you want to know other potentialities of what this may be, but it is just condensation for the record, comment truth below, and I'll DM you with some stuff.
So after that whistleblower says this wasn't a theory but the program she says she saw from inside, the story gets bigger. Trump himself amplifying Lee Zeldin's transparency push and makes it clear the administration is done treating the question like a joke. Holy crap, Trump just shared this clip of Lee Zeldin discussing geoengineering and chemtrails across America. concerns with geoengineering and to stop the activity being scaled up. Trump knows what's happening, and so does his entire administration. This is what Trump shared.
Geoengineering and contrails. The American public deserves and expects urgent and important questions about geoengineering and contrails. The American public deserves and expects honesty and transparency from their government when seeking answers. But for years, people who asked questions in good faith were dismissed, even vilified by the media and their own government. That era is over. The Trump EPA is committed to total transparency. As a result, I tasked my team at EPA to compile a list of everything we know about contrails and geoengineering for the purpose of releasing it to you now publicly. In other words, I want you to know everything I know about these topics, and without any exception. Instead of simply dismissing these questions and concerns as baseless conspiracies, we're meeting them head on. We did the legwork, looked at the science, consulted agency experts, and pulled in relevant outside information to put these online resources together. Everything we know about contrails to solar geoengineering will be in there. That means anyone who reads through this information will know as much about these topics as I do as EPA administrator. To anyone who's ever looked up to the streaks in the sky and asked, what the heck is going on? Or seen headlines about private actors and even governments looking to blot out the sun in the name of stopping global warming? We've endeavored to answer all of your questions at the links on your screen. In fact, EPA shares many of the same concerns when it comes to potential threats to human health and the environment, especially from solar geoengineering activities. The enthusiasm for experiments that would pump pollutants into the high atmosphere has set off alarm bells here at the Trump EPA. Prior to now, EPA has never been this proactive to raise awareness about concerns with geoengineering and to stop this activity from being scaled up. This is what it looks like when government actually listens to the will of the people and doesn't try to squash it. You can always trust this administration and this EPA to take your concerns seriously, answer your questions honestly, and carry out the will of voters with integrity.
Remarkable moment. Trump's EPA going straight at a subject the media spent years mocking, and that's exactly why the net press is scrambling. New York Post tries to contain the damage with an investigation after the old dismissal line stopped working. Listen to this. This just came out.
Are evil forces spraying the population with mind control gases, biological warfare chemicals, or high-tech weather modification technology? A surprising number of people, including multiple government officials, believe the answer is yes. That so-called chemtrails are real. The scientific community has consistently debunked chemtrails, and any claims to the contrary have been dismissed as baseless conspiracy theories. Until now. Chemtrail true believers claim a series of government documents, including a declassified top-secret CIA report, reveal the awful truth. And even the United States Secretary of Health has vowed to stop this sinister poisoning of the skies.
I'm going to do everything in my power to stop it.
So were the conspiracy theorists right all along? By the end of this video, you will know what the top secret documents reveal, what the science data shows us, and whether you need to be worried about what's being sprayed in the sky. I'm going to dive in and make this make sense.
So that's a big New York Post piece that just came out yesterday. So what do we have here? What we have is that this is the aha moment. The real story here is not that every online claim has suddenly been proven. The real story is that the wall of automatic denial has cracked. Under President Trump, the federal government is no longer treating Americans like children who cannot handle uncomfortable questions. Lee Zeldin's message was simple and powerful. If the EPA knows something about contrails, geoengineering, or weather modification proposals, the public should see it. That's a massive shift from the censor-first culture Americans endured when Biden was president. Transparency is the win. Open inquiry is the win. And the people who spent years smearing skeptical citizens are now scrambling because sunlight is finally pouring in. So this is not about blind panic. It's about demanding receipts. It's about refusing to let bureaucrats, corporate media, and the same failed gatekeepers decide which questions are allowed and which questions get people mocked into silence. President Trump opened the door. Lee Zeldin is pushing transparency, and now the conversation's out in the open where it belongs. If you think Americans have the right to ask what is being studied, tested, and sprayed into the atmosphere without being smeared by the media, share this report everywhere and drop a comment below and answer this yes or no question. Do you trust the government to tell the full truth about chemtrails and geoengineering? And if you haven't done so yet, I'm not sure what you're waiting for. There are hundreds and hundreds of patriots who have already texted raw feed to 844-840-4963. I want you to be the next one. Why? Because it's your one-way ticket to beat the algorithm. I know you want the notifications. There's a reason you're watching this video and you're not getting them. But when you text raw feed to 844-840-4963, you're going to get the direct alerts from me straight to your phone when it matters the most. And make sure you check out the Next News merch shelf below this video. Stay loud, stay fearless, and keep looking up, because informed Americans are impossible to control.
The system controls information. Information control is power.
They don't want you to see this.
The truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now.